All right. So I want to kind of set the scene here. We were collecting questions from brokers in the industry before I introduce these guys. One broker wrote in, have you ever seen another year where once-in-a-lifetime catastrophic events, the ULA transfer tax, the wildlife ordinance, interest rates going from 2.5% to 7%, the actors strike, insurers scaling back, and no inventory have happened all at the same time? So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell right now. It's kind of a low inventory, low sales environment, kind of low flow as we go. You know, it's kind of created this market malaise a little bit. And, you know, recently Southern California had the lowest number of sales since 2008, which was around the Great Recession. So, you know, I think interest rates alone would have done the trick. Then you have transfer taxes on top of that. So it's, you know, created this challenging environment. You know, that's why we're here today. We assembled a great all-star panel. I want to introduce them in a second. You guys know, you know, a lot of them. You know, I want to hear what they have to say. And, you know, questions are welcome at the end. So we'll go from there. We've got Jason Oppenheim.
Hey, guys.
Founded the Oppenheim Group. They've done $3 billion in sales. They have 2 Emmy award-winning shows, or Emmy-nominated shows, sorry. Probably will win later. We got Rayni Williams. Launched her own firm in 2020. Interesting time to launch during the pandemic, but these guys are killing it. And, you know, Rayni builds as well as brokers. She's got a spec home for $38 million on the market. It's a James Bond-inspired mansion. It's got a $40,000 rotating bed and a fake mountain lion. So we're going to hear more about that later. I'm going to ask. And I want to see this fake mountain lion at some point. And then we've got Jade Mills. You know, you can't work in... Yeah, you can't work in real estate, and you probably can't exist in LA without knowing who she is. You know, she's done $8 billion in sales. I think the #1 all-time selling agent for Coldwell Banker. And $120 million sale was her finest hour ever. That was a Spelling Mansion, pretty famous. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you know, the first thing I want to get into is market conditions. That's a big question on everybody's mind. So, you know, the question is, are we at a bottom here? Jason, you were telling me you think the bottom might have been 6 months ago. What do you think's going to be ahead?
My ideas change almost every day.
It's all right.
After
the market changes
the
every
Fed
day.
meeting yesterday, I would probably extend the doom and gloom a few more months. I think we're probably not going to see the corner turn till the middle of 2024. I do think that in terms of prices, when I spoke about 6 months ago, that was in terms of prices. I actually think the bottom in terms of prices was about 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. But the bottom in terms of volume is probably, you know, we're probably in it right now. I think 2024 will turn around a little bit in terms of interest rates creeping down, volume. Well, listen, we make our money on volume, not really on prices. I started this business in 2009 and 2010, which was a terrible time to you know, be in real estate. But I don't remember the volume being this bad. So this, to me, is probably the most difficult year we've faced. And I think the volume, I read the article differently, if it's the Real Deal article you're talking about. It said that we've seen the lowest number of sales since 1990, even lower than 2008.
Right,
so
right.
I think we may be in, you know, one of our darkest years, but real estate goes up and down, guys, so I'm sure we'll manage. We'll be all right.
You would take a 20% price discount and volume over, you know, no volume and prices holding steady.
Well, I own a lot of personal real estate, so for me, I don't want to see prices go down. But in terms of just agents and how they make their money, I think that we're more a volume-driven profession than we are a price-driven profession.
It seems like the key thing is just that buyers and sellers, I mean, besides not much being on the market, but even when there is stuff on the market, you know, buyers and sellers are just not a meeting of the mind. And Jade, you were talking about this. Buyers think it's a buyer's market. Sellers think it's a seller's market. So what do you do? How do you know, you just did a deal. I think it was at $34 million. It ended up selling, it was priced at 48, ended up selling at 34. How did you get a meeting of the minds there? I mean, it's a pretty big drop and a lot of negotiation to happen.
Well, I think we all have to feel that the market is amazing. And we have to let our clients know that that's how we feel, and we have to be really positive, and I know you are too. So I think that when we get an offer, you can't just say, okay, we have an offer, let's negotiate this in 3 days and it'll be over. It took us 3 months to negotiate that particular deal. And it took a lot of work and a lot of patience. And I think the buyer wanted the house. The sellers, of course, wanted to sell. And it was just communication between us and the buyer and the seller and making everyone feel good and making it feel fair for both buyer and seller. And that's so important in our business. And don't answer for your buyer or your seller. Don't say, oh, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not even going to ask. Right. Because we're here to make the deal. And that's communication. And that's spending time, no matter how much time it takes, and make the deal.
I feel like every deal is notable these days because there's so few deals. So in that scenario, the seller were what? They were downsizing, they were empty nesters. I mean, you're only going to get sellers in a very specific kind of situation right now, it seems like.
Yes, the sellers were downsizing and really wanted to sell. And the buyer wanted a tennis court, basically. And so...
And a fake mountain lion? Or
No, that's Rayni's house.
Right.
But it was just getting them to a price. And I kept going back to the buyer and saying, this is your house. And it just takes, it really...
How many back and forth, what, like 5, 6 times you went back and forth on price?
We went back and forth probably 5 times, but it was over a period of 3 months. So once the sellers thought they were gone, they wanted them back.
And this is a crazy
strategy.
One. Yeah. So this is a crazy one. The Mohammed Hadid site, it was initially listed for $250 million, but now it's $68 million, so that's a $180 million price cut. I'm sure he priced it out before you had the listing.
Do you think it was ever overpriced?
No. So Rayni, what are you seeing today, you know, in terms of aspirational pricing? Is that just getting like absolutely sucked out of the market? Like you cannot aspirationally price anything anymore?
Well, that's the thing. We talk about the market and the prices and the buyer and seller alignment, which is not there, but the prices were not ever realistic. But we live in this really beautiful niche of Los Angeles where if you look back in 2008, we were the first metropolis to recover. We really were. I mean, New York City didn't recover as quickly as we did. I would talk to my friends in New York in finance and they were struggling far longer than we were. We started rebounding 6-8 months in 2008, and by a year and a half, we were fully recovered. So, it's a cyclical thing, real estate. You have to really study the markets and the 10-year cycles. We had a 13-year run, and the numbers were climbing and climbing and climbing, and there were 200. The way we were climbing, we were looking to have a $500, $800 million home in our lifetime. So it was really getting astronomical. I think this is a great adjustment. I think Jade's right. We have to stay positive. There's 3 types of markets. We always say it. There's a buyer's market, a seller's market, and a salesperson's market. And if you're a salesperson out there, it's always your market because somebody's always in debt. Someone's always dying. Someone's getting divorced. These are the things that drive markets. Supply and demand, great. You look at that and you try to gather data from the cycles and that's what you do. But really, right now, there's such extraordinary wealth in this city that sellers don't have to sell. So if you're an agent, what's like the common thing that we're hearing right now? Well, if I get my price, I'll sell. What does that mean? They're not a seller because they're not getting their price in this market, most likely, their price. And then what's going to drive this market are going to be the developers that have hard money loans, 10, 13% interest rates, they have to sell. And if you have a developer that has to sell here and you have a wealthy family here that doesn't need to sell, well, that wealthy family is going to be devalued by the developer that has to sell. So eventually this market is going to flatten out even more. I think it's interesting what Jason said, and it's another perspective, but I don't agree. I think we haven't seen it. I think there's so much wealth that's propping up this market. Sometimes I come into my office and I'm like, I want to rip the Band-Aid, and I just want these sellers to start making the price cuts to make the flow, which we need. We need interaction, we need transactions, because the transactions are really down.
I think it's interesting what you're saying. There's just nobody who is in a position to need to sell. There's a spec home developers, and they have hard money loans. Maybe they need to sell, but just the average luxury buyer, even lower down on the totem pole, the regular market, you're just not seeing any
The
distressed
lower
selling?
market, you'll still get multiples.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still in fighting in a $3 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million range. You might have multiple offers on it. So that's why I don't really think we have seen it. We have everything going against us. ULA, we have crime at an all-time high. We have the homeless. We have all these negatives. And what does that tell you about Los Angeles? We're the most resilient market, arguably, in the world. Everybody wants to live in LA because of why? Weather, industry, and topography. You could be in the mountains, you could be in the ocean, and you could be in the desert all in the same day, by car. I call that WIT, weather, industry, and topography. That's what we have here.
So, and if you look at just straight out pricing right now, take out the aspirational pricing, in the regular market, you're seeing what, prices flat to up slightly, and then luxury market down 5 or 10%. Is that about where we're at?
I just think it's what Jason said. We're not transacting. So the volume is down, the numbers are sustaining. That's what I feel. And I feel that's really the problem in the market. If the numbers started to come down, we would transact more because there's plenty of money on the sidelines waiting. But it's like the buyers don't really want to be that person to pay 2021 prices. So they're sitting on their hands.
Right. And what do you think could be the unlock? I mean, Jason, we talked about this a little bit. But if interest rates go to what? I mean, is that the big unlock that you think you'd see?
I think that's exactly what we need to see. I don't think we're going to see transaction volume at anywhere near the levels. Listen, we're never getting back to 2021. That was such an epic year. We're still, riding that wave in some ways. But I don't think we're going to see that. But I think we'll see, a normalization and a return to the mean in terms of volume transaction, but only when interest rates go down like 200 basis points. So we're at 7.5 on the 30. Maybe within 12 months we'll be at 5.5, 6 on the 30. And that means that a wealthy person who can has a relationship with a bank and who wants to get listen, no one's getting a 30. You get a 5-year, maybe you're at 4.5, 5%. Then you'll pull the trigger. Then you'll sell your house at your 3.5% fixed interest in order to move into something and pay 4.5. But nobody. I'm a perfect example. I wouldn't even think about selling one of my homes now. I have a 2.8% rates on a 30. I'm never going to sell unless interest rates go down at least a couple.
You're the problem. It's people like you.
But
Thanks, Jason.
But we have a lot of those problems.
We do have a lot of those
problems because
like
why
Jason.
would anyone give?
I'm also not paying the mansion tax.
That's why you went to
Thanks.
Orange County.
But why would anyone give up a 2.2 interest rate to go to a 7% interest rate? That's why we don't have.
That's why we're not transacting, and that's why there's so many leases. Leases are at an all-time high because a lot of these families just would rather hold. They're looking at the long game, and that's.
At least pricing is for me because I rent out, my properties. This is the worst year I've had in terms of. I would get.
That's because
the lease market's oversaturated.
Yeah, I think
everybody's
that's
threw their house on for a lease.
The worst lease market I've ever seen.
Same.
pricing,
I'm
yeah.
down 25% on all my leases right now. Anything over $20,000 a month.
Yeah. So just in terms of what you're actually telling people who are thinking about going in the market, Jade, you're telling them don't sell right now. Rayni, you're saying if they're coming back to LA, they move to Montana or Austin or somewhere, they're coming back, you're telling them to lease?
The people that went to Montana, I told them not to go. I said lease.
good call.
Because in 2 years, you're going to come back and you can't buy back into this
Right.
market. No one listened to me. They're all trying to come back.
Oh, no. Bad call.
Why? Because you can't get health and wellness, the best real estate market that any city has, Hollywood. We have everything here, and you can't get that in Montana. You might save on taxes, but we say there's a very fat weather tax here, and that's what it is. It's quality of life.
We didn't talk about ULA yet, or the transfer tax, which is obviously huge. Is that coming up in every conversation right now that you're having? I mean, how much is that a factor versus the interest rates and everything else?
We don't bring it up.
Right. You tell them at the end?
I think people are getting used to it a bit because in the very beginning it was terrible. But I think now people like everything else, like property taxes and like interest rates and everything. I think things start to sort of level out. I remember when I took my real estate test years and years and years ago. I think that was like in the mid 80s. The interest rates were 16% and things were selling. So people get used to it. They're going to get used to the ULA tax, although we're hoping that that's going to go away. But they're going to get used to it, and they'll get used to the interest rates also. But when they dip a little bit, I think that we'll see a lot of people out looking again.
I think that's so important, and I always tell my clients that we were so spoiled with 2.5% interest rate. Our interest rate was lower than inflation. It was not a real market for, and for banking. It was, you weren't making any interest on your money. So if you look back to what Jade's talking about, 16%, they were doing seller financing and creating these very unique sort of deals and creative financing to make deals back then. And that's really
And
what's
seller
important.
carry.
That's what I mean, seller financing.
A lot
So
of seller carry.
ask somebody that's been in multiple markets and declining markets and really use that information to push your deals forward, because that's really what it takes. It's perception. Because people think 2%, 2.5% is the normal, and it's really not. 6% is in an average interest rate. 7% is, a little bit above average.
Here's my concern with the interest rate. So it's not the level that interest rates are at. I think she's right. 6% is probably historical average over the last 50 years, maybe 6.5. It's not that interest rates are too high. It's that there's such a quick and extensive chasm between where we were at and where we're at now. So if we had been at 4 or 5 and we had crept up to 6 or 7, we wouldn't see much of a change. Yeah. Just like the mansion tax had it gone from 1% and then maybe 2%. But what happens is you have all these people with 2.8%, these unbelievably historically low rates. So you've got so much supply tied up, and then you've got the good rate, so that you don't want to sell big. I'm going to use myself as an example again. I'm the problem. So I've got a good interest rate. I've got a low tax basis, right? Because property's gone up the last few years, and I'm going to have to pay a mansion tax. There's not a situation on the planet where I'm selling right now.
But there are plenty of people that have to, or that where they're willing to pay it. I mean, Brandon and I had one of the first cases for ULA on a $37.5 million deal, and he paid $2.7 or $2.6 million to ULA. He was one of the first checks, to go into this holding account, which, as many of you know, the money is being held in an escrow account, and Howard Jarvis Law is fighting it. It's one of the greatest tax attorney firms out there, and they're fighting it. There's a bunch of people that are suing and trying to get this repealed. So learn about that. Go on to Harvard Jarvis and really educate yourself on what's happening, because there is a chance that this will be repealed. But when our client wrote that check, it was such a blow to him, but it didn't stop him. Like Jade said, I mean, people settle in and you do what you have to do. If Jason doesn't have to sell, he's a TV star, so he can do whatever he wants. But other people, our client moved to Europe and he really wanted to be out of here. So if you have to sell, you're gonna do what you have to do, and that's what drives a market.
That would just suck to write a $2.7 million check, knowing you didn't have to write that check a month prior.
That's why everybody rushed before the tax.
So do you think there's any chance, Jason, what do you think, that it'll get repealed?
Oh, I think there's 2 chances that it gets repealed. One, I think public sentiment has turned because they promised $900 million and no effect on the economy and on real estate development. I think they've been wrong in every sense. I mean, I think we collected like 65 million. We should be at over 400 already. So I think that Howard Jarvis has got probably a 50% shot at winning, just on the facts of the law as I understand them. And then it's on the California ballot the end of next year. There's probably, arguably another 50% shot. So I'd say there's a real chance that Measure ULA goes away. And I think hopefully it's a lesson that you can that you listen. Putting aside your philosophical take on taxes, and I'm not necessarily even against taxing wealthy. What I am against is inefficiency. And I think that this tax, when you put a 5.5% tax, that equates to for a developer, that's probably 25% of his profits. So we're going to see less development in apartments than we've probably ever seen in LA. I think we're online, we have 3,500 apartments so far year to date. We normally would be at about 8,000 right now. So we're actually doing more harm than good. We want more apartments in this town. I mean, the whole argument, I think, is supply. So I just think we have to be more efficient in our thought process on this.
At our panel at 4 p.m. today, we're going to explore that kind of the political thought process and, why are politicians doing what they're doing? What can real estate do about it? So stick around for that one. And then there's transfer taxes that are being planned for other areas. San Diego, I think the county of LA is thinking about one. I mean, and somebody's saying that would be a double tax, where it would be the city tax and the county tax on top of it, that would just be insane. So, just in terms of the business of brokerage now, that's obviously something that's, on your mind, I'm sure, just because there's lower transaction volume. Are you guys tightening your belts and cutting down on expenses as a result of just there being lower volume sales environment?
Me or Jason?
Yep, either.
I would say, Brandon and I just keep our operation really lean and we keep it tight. We built it that way. We want it to be more boutique style. I think you're going to see a lot of these bigger firms probably making major, and you hear about the cutbacks that they're making. So I think it's a great time for the boutique brokerage. I think it's really important to be lean and mean.
I think we just do it differently. We're not doing a lot of print advertising, but we're doing a lot more online. We're doing a lot more Instagram. I am actually picking up the phone and calling past clients. And I will go from a showing at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'll have 20 minutes in between the next showing. And I'll call Stephanie and I'll say, put me through to this person or that person. We start at A and try to get to Z, and just call people, not to buy or sell, just to touch base. And I think it's our way of advertising in a different market. Mm-hmm. And I think it works. Maybe better.
Yeah. You got to pull out all the stops right now. We had this question from a broker who wrote in. It sounded kind of desperate. What do you do when a property appears to be priced appropriately, but it's not moving, and you've already dropped the price and done all the marketing tricks you can think of?
Stage it again. Change the staging. I think people buy a lifestyle. And so I really think that sometimes the house just doesn't look like where people want to live. And I know, we always try to create that feeling of turning on the music, opening the doors, making it smell good. These are all things that people love. They're buying a lifestyle. They're really not buying a house. So you have to make them feel like they want to live there.
I want to add on to that, because I went on a listing appointment a month ago at this point, and it was probably a tear-down house for most people. And the other agent told the client, "Listen, I can bring in some developers. We could probably get 2-1, 2-2 for this house." I thought the house was very charming, and I said, we have a concierge program. If I put in $50,000 or $60,000, I'll redo the landscaping, the lighting, I'll repaint, I'll take the asbestos off the ceiling, and I'll stage it. And I think we could get a lot more. We did that. It took a month of work, and we put it on at 2,349. Mm-hmm. We got 24 offers, and we're in escrow over $3 million on that house right now.
Wow.
And
Nice.
21 of them were cash.
Wow.
So I'm a huge believer in. I always have been. I think that's arguably probably the core of our business is getting houses ready. But I think we got a lot of things that we're facing, a lot of hurdles. The best thing we can do, I think, is actually do a good job. Mm-hmm. And I think that is presentation. And that's,
Absolutely.
Again, staging, but it's artwork, it's cleaning carpets, it's getting new sheets, it's, taking the popcorn off the ceiling, it's, maybe doing inspections beforehand to fix things that might be uncovered. It's, paint, hardwood flooring. We're taking listings that are $1 million listings, I don't even know where this house was, but we spent $20,000 on hardwood flooring and paint, and we got multiples. I just think we did new sod, we put a drip system, we put lighting. I mean, to me, it's so much about, this is why I love residential real estate and not commercial. It's all about presentation. It's all about selling a lifestyle, and that's what's fun. But right now, if we want to be successful, I think that's how we distinguish ourselves, and that's how we earn our money.
So it's really just doubling down and looking at the presentation of the property from the,
Yeah, listen, it's not 2021. You can't just, you could take a photo with your cell phone and get multiple offers in 2021. But now I think we gotta earn it.
And we have downtime, so it's the perfect time to reinvent the property and reinvent yourself. And like Jade said, reconnect with people, keep calling and keep the momentum going. I mean, I tell all the agents that are at my firm, it's like now if you don't have the deals that you had, is the perfect time to create content. Like Jade said, content is free, and it doesn't have to be the $3,000 print ads that we all spend for the LA Times and so forth. And it's just continue to recreate yourself, sell yourself, and remarket yourself in the property.
And
I think it's also a great time to look into different technology. I know that Luxury Presence has a new app, and it's like a virtual assistant, and you can be in front of a house and you can say how many houses on this street have sold in the last year, and it comes up immediately. These are all things that are not expensive that other people don't have. So I think now is the time that we look into different things and we try to find out how we can put ourselves at the top of the agent pool.
Yeah, I'm curious in the audience, raise of hands, who's used ChatGPT and AI so far? Okay, so yeah, 40%. That seems pretty good. Are you guys integrating it into anything quite yet?
I mean, a couple of, when I get lazy with a description, that's the only time I use it.
And then you have to edit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, because it's talking about a house
Everything
in
the robot does,
Florida.
you have to redo. So
Yeah.
I like to cut
I
the
say
robot
like
out.
sophisticated, and then it's like, a poem, and I might dial it down a little bit. So.
You can't hit publish without looking
Yeah.
at what it spits out.
My
that's for
husband
sure.
says to me, "Oh my God, don't use that. Those are not your words."
Well, talking about earned media or free media like social media, Jason, obviously you have some of the hugest earned media in the world through your TV shows. What have you ever calculated what the ROI on that is, or done any calculation on
I would
what that
never
actually brings
publicly
in?
say that because then Netflix would stop.
We know
saying
you
it.
have. Just tell us.
No, actually, it's impossible because there's so many circuitous, indirect ways of meeting people. In real estate, it's just not a direct line, so it's just impossible. I will say, it certainly I think helped me to get amazing agents in San Diego, Newport Beach. I think I probably wouldn't have expanded without the show.
And other things. Women. Girlfriends, dates.
Girlfriend, beautiful
The
girlfriend.
list goes on.
A lot of beautiful girlfriends.
You have to read People magazine.
Don't applaud
for
that,
stuff.
guys.
We don't get into that. No, unless you want to share something.
I definitely don't want to share.
I will say social media, my son does my 30 seconds with Jade on my Instagram. And I have
Austin.
right there. And I will say we've sold quite a few houses from Instagram. So it's really something that I think everyone should do.
Yeah, I bought a house from Instagram, and I see all you guys. I mean, I see all of your homes.
And I was happy to sell it to you.
Yeah.
He just called me. He's like, I saw this on Instagram. It looks really good. I'm like, I'll
Yeah, I
represent
really
you.
honestly see a lot of my new listings on Instagram. I should be on the MLS more probably. But.
And I see yours
Oh, good.
on Instagram.
Well, we've got a bunch of your kids in the front row there. Do you think about bringing them up in the business? How do you think about succession? It's such a topic on everybody's mind these days.
Yes, we hear a lot about succession. Well, I have one son who is not interested at all, Austin, and he's doing his own thing and seems to be doing it well. I have my oldest daughter, Tiffany, who works in Santa Ynez, so she's not going to be working here with me. Alexis is working very hard and does work with me with her husband, Michael, who actually is in Rayni's office. And Alexis, of course, is in my office. And I've been trying to get Charlie in the business. And then Zach, my oldest son, works more in Malibu. But as far as me ever leaving the business, it's never going to happen.
Nice. Well, I mean, I think you did something right, even if one kid wants to follow you into the business.
Well,
I
they
mean,
all four have licenses.
There you go. That's pretty cool. So I know you guys are going to have different answers for this one, but there's been such a successful proliferation of boutique brokerages. You guys, Rayni and Jason. There's been Carolwood, Side. Is there any benefit to working for a big brand these days? In contrast to boutique, when you have ChatGPT and the internet and social media, that equalizes things. What's the value proposition there?
You're the only one that works for a large.
Well, yes.
What do you think
if you're asking me, I love my company. I work for Coldwell Banker. And I love my company, and I love the support that I get, and I love our president. She's here. And I love my Michael, who works with me daily and does our trend report. And I mean, all the way from Ryan Schneider at the top to my office manager, Tom Dunlap, I get so much support and love from this company. And so many perks. So I love my company, and I would never leave. But I see how they thrive in a smaller office, and I think what's good for me isn't necessarily good for someone else. And they work so hard with their businesses, and I have so much support that I'm very happy where I am.
And I would add to that by saying, it is so difficult. I know we spoke when you went on your own, and I remember I called Aaron Kerman when I went on my own, and Mauricio, and he's gone through it. It's a lot to run your own boutique, and with the splits that are being offered, still out there at 80-20 or whatever it is, I mean, I think there's a lot of arguments for being at a big brokerage right now, but I think that Jade hit it on the head. It's about you and how you fit in. Some people, just like when I was at a law firm, I was at a huge law firm. Some people loved a boutique law firm, I think it's really individual at that point, because I think you can get a lot of value from a large brokerage, but there's also a great kind of, we've curated a really nice family environment at ours.
So, Rayni, do you find, when you were working in-house somewhere, you were spending, 90% of your time on deals? What is the equation now when you have to run your own brokerage?
I still spend 90% of the time on deals. I have great management, and I think that's the key. But Jason's right. It's hard to have your own brokerage, but for Brandon and I, it was harder for us to be at a firm because our brand had outgrown the firm. And we were at a wonderful firm. We loved it, and it was great to us. But we wanted to create something different. And Jade's right. You have to go where the love is. I mean, every firm there's so many unique aspects to each.
And she's young.
Youngish. I think that it's important to go where you fit in, and Jade is Coldwell Banker. Jade can be anywhere, and Jason is, his ethos is really, it's prominent in what he brings to the table and has created. And Brandon and I created something completely different, and we didn't recruit, and we have 100 agents now, and that's strictly by organic growth of connecting with people and what fit with us, because it's not about a fast growth or trying to be a Coldwell Banker. These boutiques are never going to be Coldwell Banker or Douglas Elliman or so forth. It's something different, and it's an experience, and it has to really resonate with you.
Yeah.
I would also add, I don't know if this is specific to people in this room, but I definitely wouldn't chase the money. Maybe this is self-serving because I have a much worse split than probably any other brokerage, but I definitely would focus on the ethos and the environment that you like, but probably more so the type of agents that you're going to work with. I think it's really, I loved being at Coldwell Banker. That's how I met Jade, and I had many, many good years as I loved the people that I worked with. I was on the Joyce Ray team. I mean, I couldn't love her more than anyone. So I think it's about the group that you're with and the people that you get to know, because I love being in the office. I know people are working out of the office these days. I love an office. And I love going to Coldwell Banker because I had 4 or 5 great friends there at that office, and that made work enjoyable. So to me, that's what matters.
We didn't want to see him go.
So has it gotten easier in terms of recruiting now? You don't have Compass offering $1 million payouts and equity to everybody who comes on board as a junior agent. So is it easier to bring on people now? Or you're just not really in recruiting mode?
I don't recruit, and I don't think Rayni does. If someone qualified, talks to us, we get hundreds and hundreds of people that we're not going to hire.
Gorgeous girls.
Yeah, oh my God.
Well, but we also get, every 17-year-old in Belgium, too. We get, hundreds, it seems like. But if you're really qualified and you're doing, 10, 20 plus million, then we'll talk to you. But we don't need to recruit, luckily. I would say that the market generally is a lot healthier because I want to see the brokerages thrive. And you can't make money when you're averaging 19%, 18% from your agents, like many of the brokerages have had to do. I'd like to see that come up to 70-30, like it was, when I was at Coldwell Banker, because you need healthy brokerages to have a healthy real estate market, and to offer services and offices and desks and good managers and good advice and good training. And I want to see, honestly, I know that every agent wants to see more money in their pocket, but I'm a big believer that splits need to come back up to the 70-30 range.
Could there be something that resets them to that level, or?
Well, it will, because look at what's happening to the stock of these major brokerages right now. I think all you're seeing right now is the brokerages cutting back, and I think that there's going to have to be a return to the mean, and that's probably around 70-30. That's what brokerages need to offer the services that agents need.
Yeah, and I think you've seen, like, the discount brokerages that, you pay $3.99 a month fee. Like, that model never seemed to work. There's only so much you can really shave off there,
Well, not in the luxury market. You're not going to have luxury agents, at those brokerages, I don't think.
Yeah. So I want to ask about the Mountain Lion and your spec home. So first of all, how's it going marketing it? It just came on the market, and where are you looking for buyers?
Well, right now, this is a very unique property, so it's not going to appeal to everybody, but I think that art is a great divide, and art separates people, and I look at this as a work of art, and I think when you're separated by art, you're either it's not for me, or I love it, it's so for me, I have to have it. And that's sort of the way that Brandon and I have always built, and we've built over 20 homes now, and it was a passion project. There's, for all the reasons that we've talked about, not the profit margins that there once were. So we definitely didn't do it for that. We did it out of love of legacy and wanting to have a piece of mid-century architecture that's going to be there on the hillside with this extraordinary view. And, one day our kids will be like, our parents built that, and other people will remember it as being a great property. So there's that. Marketing it is sort of one of these things where, you put the best pictures out there, and you kind of make the splash as best you can. And I really believe that the buyer finds you, and when you're putting your best foot forward. So that's kind of what we're doing. We had a piece in the Wall Street Journal that, we didn't love. We didn't think it wasn't the most flattering piece, but that's media, right? You roll the dice with media, whether you want to take the interview and get the press or you don't. And they'd kind of followed us for a couple of years, and they wanted to photograph us and photograph the house, and and then they give you the headlines that they choose to give you, and they look for clickbait, and there's that. And you kind of have to just be bigger than the story and understand that the only way you can really win and really set the precedent is by selling it for a great number to a great person. And we sold the house above it, which we collaborated with Lenny Kravitz, the famous singer, songwriter, rock and roll star, and he got into design and did our personal home in Truesdale. And we said, we loved working with him. You should do this spec home with us. And we ended up selling that for $34 million. Wow. And that was such a record-breaking price for this area, because this area was somewhere that banks didn't want to lend on. We personally had to finance it, and the appraisers were like, "Are you insane? What's your comp?" We're like, "We don't have a comp. We're going to make a comp." And that's sort of the attitude that we have to have. We all sort of have to come together and think outside of the box in these times, create comps, create positivity, create your own buzz, because the foreign buyer is not really there, right? We don't have the foreign buyer that's driving up our local buyers. It's just, it's a time where you have to get creative, you have to stay inspired, and that's really why we did this. That's why we created our office, to be inspired. We created this property to be inspired, and Brandon actually brought in this mountain lion because he really followed the P22 story, and it was very close to his heart, and he wanted to have this homage to P22, the famous mountain lion from Los Angeles, which you probably know the story. So that's there, and there's a lot of other aspects of this home that are just things that we care about. So again, this house isn't going to speak to everybody. It's maximalism. It's really a funky mid-century modern, but it has an incredible view, and we're hoping that the right buyer comes to us. The one above us, the buyer came to us out of nowhere, flew in, he saw it somewhere, and we had no idea who he was. And at that time, he had a new wife, and then shortly after, a new baby. And it was this big, view property on a hillside. So you just never know where the buyer's going to come from.
And I mean, putting a property on the market, building a $38 million property is like the ultimate testament of faith in the market and LA too. To do that, I'm sure it's a wild ride. You know, I also wanted to ask, ties in with the mountain lion, the wildlife ordinance, you know, that's being debated for Hollywood Hills. What do you guys think about it? Like, do you think it's going to have a significant effect on the luxury market? Do you think it's likely to get passed?
The wildlife ordinance is passing. I think it's going to make the existing properties much more valuable. If we have to put a positive spin on it, which we have to do as salespeople, I think maybe it was time. Maybe it was time to not have, 40,000 square foot homes, or perhaps the one on the top of a roll that we sold for 141 million, 100,000 square feet. Maybe that was one of them, that kind of pushed it over a little. And we don't know. I don't like it, and I don't like that property owners don't have rights to do what they want to do with their properties, their hard-earned money that they put into these investments, and they're told that they can only build 6,500 square feet. I don't like the way that sounds, but if it's coming, we're going to pivot, and what we're going to do is take all of these homes that are already built and make them, they are now automatically more valuable. And then, variances will become our new favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is scurrying to try to get plans and permits before whenever. I mean, there's no real date yet, but everybody is scurrying to try to get plans and permits before it
Kicks in.
yeah.
And to put a positive, if it's possible, on the wildlife ordinance and the mansion tax, I think putting some type of wildlife. Well, first of all, I'm not so sure this is about wildlife. This is about development. But
It's not about wildlife.
no, I know. Should we restrict, 50,000 square foot homes in the hills that have, 40,000 dump trucks? Probably. But I guess the frustration is that it's so draconian in its limitations, just like the mansion tax was so, aggressive, that it ends up creating so much inefficiency and so much friction in the market that it does 5 times more damage than it does good. So what I'd like to see LA do is address real problems honestly, like don't couch it as a wildlife ordinance, and don't restrict someone's beautiful piece of land to just a 3,000 square foot house, but let's have an open debate. Let's be honest, just like the mansion tax, we have a homeless problem. Let's have an open debate. Let's be honest. Let's legislate it. And let's do it in a more appropriate, more efficient manner.
Yeah, just like calling the mansion tax a mansion tax when it's also
Perfect
a
example,
commercial
yeah.
real estate tax too. All right, well, takeaway today. I want to go back to what the broker said. About that property couldn't sell. Drop the price. Tried all the marketing tricks. You guys are saying stage it. Go back to the bones. Figure out the property. Figure out the presentation. It seems like a good takeaway. And I want to thank you guys for getting on stage.
Can I say one thing?
Go ahead, Jade.
No question that you've asked, or we haven't talked about it all, but we 3 are friends. These are very good friends of mine. We support each other. It seems like we would be negotiating, with clients or against each other. We are friends. Everyone in this room should work together. We're a team. We're a huge team. And this is the way that we're going to get deals done, by working together and supporting each other. So my takeaway is support each other and do lots and lots of deals.
Yeah, cooperation helps. All right, well, thank you guys. Thank you,
you for having
everybody.
us.
We're going to start with our next panel in 1 minute.